I'm Toby Mildon. I'm a diversity and inclusion architect and the founder of Mildon, which is a diversity and inclusion consultancy. Leaders have a huge impact on diversifying workforces and creating more inclusive cultures for a number of reasons. One, if an organization is really serious about diversity and inclusion, it has to start from the top of the organization, because the senior leaders, they set the tone for the business and they create the culture, or they help shape the culture for the organization. So it really has to start with them. And it is true, you can have grassroots change as well. So you can assemble employees and you can create employee resource groups or diversity networks or get your staff to organize things. But it really has to start with the senior leadership team, who lay out the vision and role model the kind of inclusive behaviors that they expect everyone else in the organization to follow, and to put a plan or a strategy in place. When I work with my clients, I take them through 3 phases. So there's assess, plan, and implement. And if we just start with assess, really that's starting with your own people. It's about understanding the lived experience of the staff that you've already got, and the challenges that they might be facing in the organization, or the non-inclusive behaviors that they might be experiencing day to day in the organization. Once you have that understanding, you can then start to put a plan in place, because so many organizations, they start the wrong way round. They focus on what has to be done, and they start to develop solutions that don't really address the right problems in the organization. But really, you need to be starting from the inside out. You need to focus on why, first of all, this is important for your organization, and how diversity and inclusion will help your organization grow and prosper in the future. And then you can focus as a senior leadership team on the how. And really the how is how you get from A to B. And that's where the second phase of the flywheel comes in, which is the planning phase. And that's where you put your plans and your strategies together. But ultimately, you have to be quite introspective and look at your own behaviors, because if you are demonstrating as a senior leadership team non-inclusive behaviors, if you are not allies to a diverse workforce, then you're not going to be the best role model for your organization, and people will look up to you and they will role model the wrong behaviors. And really, if we want to create an inclusive culture, we have to think about the behaviors that we're exhibiting moment to moment. My best advice for leaders on tackling diversity and inclusion in an organization is get some support. This is a difficult journey to do on your own. You are going to come across fear of saying or doing the wrong thing or causing offense to people, and that will probably hold you back from taking action. You might also suffer from imposter syndrome, because if you're, for example, what happened with one of my clients, a straight guy, and it comes to LGBT month, you might then struggle to have a conversation about LGBT matters and sexuality within the workplace. And so you need that support to help you navigate these difficult topics. So my advice is to get some support to help guide you and coach you and mentor you through the process. Really, we need to have an approach that's based on principles. And this is something that I talk about in my book, Inclusive Growth, where I came up with 7 principles. And when I wrote the book, I wanted to think about what were the key things that organizations were doing to implement diversity and inclusion in a much more sustainable way that had a bigger impact than taking this kind of box ticking approach. So, for example, we look at getting clear on why, first of all, diversity and inclusion is important, and how to engage your senior leadership team so that it can be driven from the top. we talk about why culture is important over tactics, how you have to have like a proper change management process in place to actually drive change in the organization, and why a colleague experience and design philosophy is needed, or a human-centered approach is needed to remove bias from colleague experiences, and the role that technology plays as well in trying to make a bigger impact on diversity and inclusion. And then finally, how you can just collaborate uh, more within the organization, so that it's not just seen as the HR department's responsibility, but it's a shared responsibility across the whole of the organization. And then finally, how you just celebrate your successes, and then how you can go to market and promote yourself as an inclusive employer of choice, and you can be a magnet for talent going forwards. So those are the key principles that we cover, and they and if an organization implements them, then they have a much more profound impact for the business.